Yes, it is I, Tristan Ward, head developer of the CpExtra widget, here to tell you about CpExtra 1.4, the new update to CpExtra, which you have been waiting a very long time for, and I am sorry about that. Anyway, first new thing about CpExtra 1.4 is it is now 100% compatible with Captivate 2017, of which the previous version of CpExtra was 99% compatible, but that extra 1% really makes no difference at all. But CpExtra 1.4 has a whole slew of new command variables and the like, so I'm here to tell you about them. I'm saving the best for last, which is a nice way of saying that the first couple of features may not all be that impressive. And I am assuming that you already know how to use CpExtra and you know what a command variable is, because this is not going to be a tutorial. It is just for those people who already know Captivate Extra who want to be able to catch up with the latest features. So here we go. The first feature in CpExtra 1.4 is a set of new variables which allow you to make a playbar. Now, when I'm talking about a playbar, I am not talking about this slider down the bottom here. In Captivate, I am instead talking about this kind of playbar, where you have the total number of minutes and seconds in the course, and the playbar tells you how many minutes and seconds of the course you have already seen. Okay, this is a caption right here, and inside the caption, I am displaying 4 different variables. They are xinfo project total minutes, that's this one here, xinfo project total seconds, that's the 18 one here, xinfo project elapsed seconds, which is this one, and xinfo project elapsed minutes, which is this one over here. So if I pull up the Captivate project, you can see they are all really smushed into this one caption. But I can go over here to the properties panel and I can change the font size and I can change the font color or the font type, which means you can customize this playbar to look however you want it, and there are a lot of people who want to do that for their particular course style. Another thing that many people want to do with this kind of playbar is, okay, you see over here, as it is counting down, I am at 9 seconds here, and when I move to 10 seconds, okay, suddenly we jump over into double digits for the second value, and that looks a little bit weird. You don't really want your playbar changing sizes like that. So we also have a couple of preference variables which can control whether or not you add a little 0 in front of the value of these info variables when you are showing single digit values. They are xpref use double digit total times value and xpref use double digit elapsed time values. I'm not going to go into that. If you want to learn more about them, then please look up the help on our website. Okay, the next feature is a little bit of an edge case, but if you have come across this problem before, it is extremely infuriating because it was one of those things that you go to the Captivate forum, you say, okay, I have this problem, what's the solution? And the solution is, there is no solution, deal with it. But now there is. Okay, it goes like this. I'm going to jump back into Captivate and show you how I've set this up. I have a text entry box here. And what I want to happen is when the learner types in the value into the text entry box and then presses tab, I want the text entry box to be able to run its on success action, which here is to show this caption right above here. So I'm using the tab key as a trigger, not the enter key, not any of the other keys on the keyboard, the tab key. Now, if I jump back over into the Captivate file and I type this out and then I press tab, you can see nothing happens. And sometimes if you're doing a software simulation, you really need to be able to have something happen when you press that tab key. Either you need to move to another slide or you need to actually submit a score to the course. Well, now with CpExtra, we have a new command variable, which is xcmd prevent tab out. Now, if I jump back over here to Captivate, you can see that the action for this particular button is to assign xcmd prevent tab out with the name of this text entry box. So if I jump back over to Captivate and I type in here, press tab, you can see nothing happens still. That is because I haven't pressed this assign to xcmd prevent tab out. But once I do this and I press tab again, you can see that the success action reports correctly, and also that the focus for the text entry box did not move over down to the next text entry box. So a couple of uses in this particular area of getting text entry boxes to do what you want for this xcmd prevent tab out. Now, the next feature is really useful if you are designing complex interactions inside of Captivate and you want to debug, or you just want to send the learner a message. It is the xcmd alert command variable. And what it is when I want to, I can make one of these alert boxes appear. This is a CpExtra alert sending us the message saying, are you sure? And you can click OK if you are sure. You may have seen this alert box appear before in Captivate, but you have never really been able to customize what it says or use it by yourself. Well, now you can with the CpExtra xcmd alert caption. Let me show you how this works. What I've got here is a little interaction set up so I can type out something into this text entry box, and then I can press this button to assign it to xcmd alert. So if I just type in a message like hello, apply it to xcmd alert, you can see hello appears there. If I say hello world, that appears as well. If I want to change what the title up the top says, I don't want it to say CpExtra alert, well, what I can do is I can put in a comma here and then type in world. And you can see now world is the title and hello is the message. Now, something I want to show you here, which is a problem you may come across. Say I want to write in a rather long message and saying this is a long message where I tell you what to do next. And then I assign that to xcmd alert. You can see all the spaces, all that white space has now been stripped out. This is a feature of CpExtra which is automatic, and it really allows CpExtra to be able to process these command variables much quicker, but in this particular case, it's a bummer. So what can we do to get around this? Well, this is a new feature of CpExtra 1.4 which can help. It allows you to designate a string inside of CpExtra. Let me show you what you do. First of all, you go right to the head of your parameter, then you type in a square bracket, a left square bracket there, and then right at the end, a right square bracket. And if I assign that again, the spaces between the words have been retained. This can be used for any command variable inside of CpExtra, and it is very useful at some points. I'm going to show you its usefulness later on in this lesson. But anyway, for now, I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to move on to the next slide, which also lets me show off the debugging value of this particular command variable. Say you've set up a big, long, advanced action, and you want to know at this particular point, what does the value of this variable hold? For example, I've got a variable here which is called value, and I can change its value inside here to be hello my minions. And I want to know at this particular point, what is the value of variable? Well, I can use xcmd alert to tell me that in the following way. I'm going to type out in here first of all, I'm going to put this in as a string. The current value of the value variable is, and then this is the trick. I'm going to put in double dollar signs, type in value, double dollar signs, and close it off like this. And now I'm going to assign it to xcmd alert. And it tells me is the current value of the value variable is hello my minions. This is a special thing for the xcmd alert variable where you can put in this double dollar sign thing inside of the string. This will not work with other command variables, but in a little bit we will also see that the double dollar sign does have usefulness in other areas. Okay, now moving on, you can see we've already looked at the first parameter here, which sets up a message. If I put in a comma, I can then put in the title, but then there is also a third and a fourth parameter. What do those do? Okay, let's say I have a message, something like this. Do you want to go to the next slide? Question mark. And then assign that to an alert. Do you want to go to the next slide? You want to be able to click OK, and you want CpExtra to automatically move the learner to the next slide once they click OK. Okay, well, you can actually set up an action to happen when you click that OK button. Down the bottom here, I have a couple of buttons. I have a button called action and a button called value. These are their item names as well. If I click the action button, you can see it pops up another alert saying this is the action button success action. And if I click on the value button, it brings up an alert that says this is the value button success action. Okay, let's say I want to have this alert appear after I have clicked the previous caption's OK button. So the caption that's going to say, do you want to go to the next slide? How do I do that? Well, first of all, I'm going to have to put in a title so that I can get to the third parameter, which is the following. I can put in the name of an interactive object, like the button down here, action. So now that is pointing to this object, and I can point to one of the actions on that interactive object. In this case, I want the success action, because if I jump back over to Captivate, select this button, you can see over here on its success, that's where that other caption is appearing, this one right here. So let's try that out. I'm going to now assign that to XCMD alert. Okay, do you want to go to the next slide? If this is working correctly, once I click the OK button, a different caption should appear. Yes, okay, that action button's caption appears right there. So of course you do not have to have a alert appear in that case. You could select any one of these different actions to happen after you click the OK button. But now I want to show you a little bit of a difficult area here. Okay, let's say I have this value button over here and I want its success action to happen instead. So I'm going to go here and type value, okay, and then I'll click XCMD alert. And I come up with an error. It says, could not find the slide object in the movie by the name of test. Okay, what's going on here? I didn't write test in here, I wrote value. Okay, the problem is I have a button here called value, and I also have a Captivate variable here called value. CpExtra doesn't know which one I am wanting to target. It thinks I want to look at this Captivate variable's value, and I can bear that out if I type out here action into this variable's value, click XCMD alert. Do you want to go to the next slide? Haha, the action buttons variable appears. So I don't want it to target the variable. Instead, I want to target the button. I can ensure it does that by going back up here and typing those little square brackets around value. And if I type that, okay, now we can see the value button success action appears. Now, what if it's the other way around? What if CpExtra sometimes thinks I'm trying to target a slide object when I'm actually trying to target a Captivate variable? Well, in that case, I can explicitly tell CpExtra I want that variable by typing in $signs over the top there. So if I do that, okay, yeah, it's going back to the action variable, action button, because over here in the variable, I targeted the action button. Okay, so that might be a little bit heady if you're not familiar with CpExtra, but if you're starting to get deeper into CpExtra, then you know that this is a problem that does sometimes come up. Another problem that may sometimes come up is that you want to have a action happen right at the start of the movie. You may think, oh, well, that's no biggie. If I want an action to happen right at the start of the movie, I just go up here to the first slide. And on the first slide here, I change the on enter action. And yes, that does work. Unless you have, as this project has, gone to table of contents, settings, and turned on self-paced learning right here. Or if you are looking at the course in an LMS and it's going to bookmark your progress. In that case, you may not ever see the first slide of the movie when you come back to view the course for a second time. It may jump you right into the middle. Well, this is where the where were we? Yep, here, xpref init action variable is very useful. Just like the last two variables up here of the XCMD alert, where you could specify an interactive object name and a criteria, here you can also type out the name of an interactive object and a criteria, and CpExtra will find that object, that button or that text entry box, whatever it is, its action will be located, and then right at the start of the movie, no matter whether it's the first slide or whether you jumped into the middle of the movie, it will run that action. So just to prove my point here, I am now going to refresh the page. Do you want to continue where you stopped from last time? Okay, yes, I do want to do that. You can see, okay, welcome to CpExtra 1.4. That was a action which I had set up to happen because of xpref init action. Same way, if I go refresh the page, I press cancel, this will take me back to the first slide. Okay, welcome to CpExtra 1.4. It works in any one of those circumstances. This is very useful if you have the habit of right at the beginning of the movie using hash syntax to hide a whole lot of objects in the project or to add event listeners to a whole lot of objects in the project. Now you can use bookmarking and self-paced learning with those features. Okay, let's continue on to the next feature, which has to do with rounding numbers. Okay, let me jump back into Captivate and show you the setup here for this particular slide. Okay, I have a variable here which is telling me what percentage I am through the course. Now, in order to calculate this requires division, and you know, sometimes from like math course you can sometimes have divisions that go on forever, you know, sort of like pi and that sort of stuff. That happens sometimes. For example, if you want to calculate an exact third, for example, at this point we're an exact third through the course, well, that's 33.33333 and goes on forever. And until now in Captivate, you had no way of rounding numbers. Well, now you do. See, round. That is because I have now given in CpExtra 4 command variables that have to do with rounding. Let me show you how they work. Okay, the first one here is xcmd round, and I'm going to show you an example of how that works. Whoops, those little information things down the bottom jumped away. Okay. Say I've got my variable here, it's 33.3333, etc. If I assign that variable's name, my variable, to the round, xcmd round command variable, okay, it's going to round it to the nearest number. The same if it's 6.6666, etc. It will round it to the nearest number, which is 67. However, over here, if I use xcmd floor, which is also a rounding command variable, okay, it's going to round it down, in this case for 33.333 to the nearest number, 33. But if it is at 66.6666, okay, previously xcmd rounded it to the nearest whole number, which was 67, but xcmd floor will always round down to 66 in this particular case. The opposite of that is xcmd seal, which I think stands for sealing. These are all from JavaScript, the names of these functions. If I assigned my variable to xcmd seal, it's going to round it up to 34. And yeah, same here with 66, it will round it up to 67. So basically, xcmd round rounds to the nearest number, xcmd floor always rounds down, xcmd sealing always rounds up. And you would think I have pretty much everything covered there. But there are some other situations where you still need to be a bit more specific about things. For example, here I have an excerpt of a shopping cart interaction here where I have something in my shopping cart, it costs 10%. Now let's say when I click this button, it's going to add a coupon to the shopping cart, which takes 1/3 off the price. And yes, it does that, but oh dear, now I have $6 and 0.666666, everything here. Okay, now I really want this to round to $6.66, but if I use xcmd round to round this particular variable, well, it's going to round it to a whole number, which is to 7, instead of to 2 decimal points, which is what I need when talking about money. So there is another command variable here, which is xcmd round 2. Let me just reset this here. So I'm back with my initial problem. I have $6.6666 whatever cents here. Now, if I assign to xcmd round price, that's the name of this variable over here. Let me just go back into Captivate to prove to you. Okay, that's the price variable, which is being described here. I'm going to assign price and as a second parameter, the number 2 here to tell xcmd round to round the price variable to 2 decimal points. When I click that, okay, there we go. We have successfully rounded to 2 decimal points. And you could use this to round to 1, to 3, to 4, to 5 decimal points, whatever you need. And you can also add an additional third parameter here, which you can specify how to round up or to round down. In this case, I rounded up. Okay, now there is something else that you need to be wary of when assigning variable names to other variables inside of Captivate. A bit of a weird thing happens. For example, here, I want to be able to round my variable here, 33.33333 here. And to be able to do that, I have to assign the variable name to xcmd round, which works fine here because as you can see down the bottom here, here's a screenshot of how this action actually looks in Captivate. I've surrounded this variable name with brackets here. What happens if I don't surround it with brackets, if I just put in the raw variable name? Well, when I click this rounding action, okay, I get an error. And that's because this is a weird thing in Captivate where if you just type in the direct Captivate variable name, it is going to instead look to that Captivate variable's value. So instead of assigning this variable name to xsimd round, it assigned this number 33.33333, which is telling me there, receive the number 33.33333. What on earth is that? To get around that issue, you need to surround that variable's name with these square braces. Now, this is not a problem if you are using multiple parameters, in this case, such as here with xsimd round 2, where I have after that a comma and then 2. It's just when you just write out a direct Captivate variable name. This is another place where those square brackets can really be a savior for you. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, what's going on here? I have 6 different boxes here, and every time I move in and out of this slide, a random one of those boxes is shown or hidden, and this is a feature of the new xsimd random variable. You have not been able to generate a random number in Captivate before, and this is something that is extremely important if you're using gamification, because, for example, if you were using a memory game, like with you deal out a pile of cards and you're trying to flip one over and find, oh, where's its copy? Well, then in that case, you really need to be able to shuffle that deck, and to be able to shuffle decks, you need to be able to generate random numbers, and now with xsimd, you can do that. It's very simple. All you have to do is this. With xsimd random, first of all, the first parameter is the name of a variable. This is going to be the variable which receives the random number so that you can then process it afterwards. Then the second parameter is the upper limit. So if I type in here 10, it is now going to generate me a random number between 1 and 10. So let me just type that in. The second parameter is the lower limit here. So I want a random number between 10 and 1. And if I just keep on doing that, generating that, you can see it's always giving me a random number. Now I can change the range. So now I want a random number between 10 and 5. And now you can see it's never going below 5. Okay, so that's also very useful for creating games and the like. Now, the very last feature is a pretty big one in my opinion. You remember we before had a widget called the master widget. It was a very cool widget. I often get asked, will the master widget ever be implemented into CpExtra? And the answer is a definite no. But a simpler version of the master widget has now been added into CpExtra. The basic goal of the master widget was to allow you a way to do partial scoring in order to be able to, change the score of the quiz depending on how many answers you got right in a particular interaction. Let's look at an example here. So here I have a very simple interaction where I'm trying to pull in a first name, a last name, email, and password. I have the correct answers over here. So let's say I put in Bill, which is the correct answer, and then Smith, which is another correct answer. But for these last two here, I will put in incorrect answers. Previously in Captivate, under these circumstances, you would have to decide, okay, am I going to give them a score of 0 or am I going to give them a complete score? The highest score for this interaction would be 4. You could not give them a partial score, in this case, such as 2, because they got 2 of the fields right, but 2 of the fields wrong. But now, if I submit this particular interaction and then move to the quiz results slide, you can see you scored 2 out of a maximum of 4. If I go back here and I type in the password correctly, which is password, don't use this password, it's really bad, then submit the interaction again, move to the next slide, you can see I scored 3. How is this possible? Well, let me move back over into Captivate and show you how it is possible. I have a submit button set up here, which if I scroll down here is reporting to the course with a maximum score of 4 points. Usually if I click this submit button, it would add those 4 points to the course, but now I have attached an advanced action, which will also happen when I click this submit button. The advanced action goes like such. Okay, right at the beginning, I create a Captivate variable, which is called calculate score. It starts with a score of 0. I then go and compare each of the variables linked to these text entry box. The first one up being here, the first name. If it is equal to Bill, I add 1 to the value of that calculated score variable here. This continues. If the last name is correct, add 1. If email is correct, add 1. If password is correct, add 1, until eventually getting here right to the end where I use the new XCMD score variable, which says, okay, I want you to target the submit button and I want you to change its score to this same value as calculated score right here. And this really opens up a new world for partial scoring. You can use advanced actions to decide how many points you want an interactive object to report to the quiz. Now, of course, this is only working for interactive objects and not quiz questions themselves. At a later point, I may expand the XCMD score variable to be able to work with those, but that really allows you to do whatever you want with partial scoring, and I'm very excited to see what people are going to do with that. Now, besides these features, and I think that is the biggest feature right there, there is also a read mode to the XMND score variable, which allows you to target an interactive object and find out what its current score is. There is also an XMND max score variable, which allows you to change the maximum score that a button or interactive object will report to the quiz. Basically, it's being able to change this number here on the fly, which can be useful sometimes if you want to give a super big score. And also there are a lot of parameters that may not have been able to use at or hash syntax before, which can. So you can also use hash syntax or at syntax to be able to target multiple variables. For example, with XMND round, you could use at syntax to target a group of variables and round them all together. Or with the XMND complete slide variable, you could use at syntax to be able to target a range of slides to be able to mark as correct. Also with XMND complete slide, sometimes you had that issue where if you had a slide name which had a space in the middle of it, like this, well, then you couldn't mark that slide as complete because, as I showed you before, CpExtra has a habit of taking out those spaces. Well, now all you have to do is put the square brackets around that name when you assign it to XMND complete slide, and you will be able to mark that slide as complete. So altogether, a whole heap of new features there for CpExtra 1.4. I hope I explained them well enough for you. I am really excited to see what you will do with this. And the next thing for CpExtra is quite possibly CpExtra version 2. Now, CpExtra version 2, if we ever get around to doing it, because we do have a very busy schedule and a lot of clients, is going to have a whole lot of new features, really big features. And for that reason, to be able to support it, we are not going to do the same thing as we did with our previous Captivate widgets, where every single update was free. There will be a associated fee if you want to upgrade to CpExtra 2 when it comes. Now, of course, if you have CpExtra 1, then you will have to pay a reduced cost. You won't have to pay the full cost of CpExtra 2. But at a later point, I really want to be able to pass some ideas I'm having for CpExtra 2 through to you guys. Maybe we'll have an e-seminar, and I want to know if this is something you will use, or maybe if you have a better idea of how to implement a feature than I currently am thinking. Think of it as a bit of a spoiler for what's coming up ahead. So if you want to know about when that's going to be, go to our website at www.infosemantics.com.au and subscribe to our mailing list. When that seminar comes out, you will be the first to know. So thank you very much for this. Have fun with CpExtra 1.4, and I will see you next time.